Hey, everybody. CJ back here with another episode of the podcast. Maybe I'll come up with a good name for it someday. I'm here with Doug Levin, and this is actually another fun first for me. That's the good thing when you kind of like start doing something like this. You're always faced with a bunch of firsts. Doug is the first person who I've never met before who found my podcast online and said, "Hey, this sounds cool. Like, I'd love to come on and talk about some stuff." So here we are meeting one another for the first time. Obviously, we exchanged a few emails in advance of this, but Doug has some cool things to talk about. So I said, "Hey, let's do it." So first of all, Doug, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Um, why don't you just indulge me and everybody else and say, and explain why, how you found this and why you decided to reach out.
Yeah. Ultimately, actually, I was looking on Apple Podcasts and you guys came up. Like, I've been around like the business side a lot more in terms of kind of getting out there looking for people, especially with the virus going on, where you can't really network as much, you can't talk to people as much. Honestly, you guys came up when I was kind of looking around, interesting places, interesting people to talk to, and just came up. So seemed like all right,
Cool.
yeah, let's talk.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great case study because, quite frankly, I do this for fun, and I mean, I also happen to own a marketing agency, so I don't really talk about my business a ton because I haven't quite figured out yet how associated I want this to be with my business. But I also, part of what I do with my marketing agency is I help businesses produce content, right? That helps them get found online, that that they could provide to their sales team to help differentiate the business, that they can, share with their customers and add more value. And there's just a tremendous amount of virtue and benefits, tangible benefits in just producing original quality content. It can be used in a variety of ways. It can benefit a variety of people and audiences. And so I advocate for producing content and making podcasts. And so this is a really good, I think, a really good axiom for the benefit of podcasting. Here I am, only been doing this for a short period of time, and I'm having people find me on Apple Podcasts and reach out, want to be a guest. I mean, it's just a really good example of why making stuff like this is fun and also useful. So, thank you. You are in Greater Chicago.
Yep, in the suburbs. Lived in Chicago all my life until I met my wife. So it was the one bad part, I guess, about meeting her. Right, I'm no longer in the city anymore. So
You're no longer, so you have very much like city proper pride.
I was for most of my life, yes.
Where in the city?
Like north side, like probably about 5-10 minutes away from the Wrigley Field where the Cubs played. So like if you knew Andersonville, that's where I grew up.
Cool. I've actually been out that way. I grew up in Connecticut, about an hour from New York City, and now I live in Buffalo, New York. It's about 6 hour drive from there. But I've been to Chicago twice. One of my best friends from high school lives up there with her husband and two girls. And before she got married, she was living right in Wrigleyville. I think it was like Clark and Addison, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Um,
like
so,
right
so I'm
there. Yeah.
familiar with that area a little bit. I remember renting bikes and like my then girlfriend, now wife, we kind of biked around the area. Um, what was what's the street where there's like all the different like NFL bars for different cities? Is it like Lincoln or I don't really remember, but I remember it was like we happened to be there on like opening day NFL Sunday, right? And we're like biking up and down this street, and every other block there's a bar with one team's flag on it. So it's all just a bunch of expats. So here's all the Cleveland people rooting for the Browns. Here's all the New York people rooting for the Giants, right? Chicago, well, actually not Chicago, but you get the idea. It was really cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's always been a huge sports town in general. I mean, since it's a big city, like obviously not as big as New York, but it's one of the bigger cities. So you get a
Yeah.
lot of people there. Like, yeah, when the Bulls were great, obviously when the Bears once every 30 years are great.
Yeah.
It goes crazy. But yeah, it's a huge sports town in general.
The Blackhawks have been good in recent years, and actually, one of their better players is actually from my neighborhood, Patrick Kane. He's from
Oh yeah.
South Buffalo, New York. Grew up right down the street from where I'm sitting right now.
Nice. Yeah,
So I love the uniforms. I love the tradition. It's a great sports town in general, not just the Blackhawks, but yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, and yeah. They took over the town for a little while as well. Like, what is it, 2010 to 2015? They were like one of the dynasties, right? So
yeah, it was. Did they win? I know they won in 2010, and then maybe like a couple years after that, 2013,
yeah,
and
and
they
then
might have won a third. Did they win two or three?
yeah, they won three. So they won in 2015. So that was the last
Cool.
one we won. So yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool.
Kane's like an icon in this town. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Um, so yeah, Chicago's great, and like I said, when I was there, I actually found a Bills bar. So my wife and I we went in and we watched a Bills game in Chicago, and of course, like ran into two people we knew because that's just Buffalo is not a huge city. Depending on your point of view, it's like a really big small town or you know what I mean, or a really small big city. Like
Right.
it's but a lot of people in Buffalo really like Chicago because the Chicago is really kind of like Buffalo on steroids. The cities are built on a Great Lake. They're laid out the same on a radial street grid. It's got a little bit of that, like it's a mix between, it's got that like Midwestern feel, but it's also a city. Come from industry, so there's a lot of like similar components in their DNA. Just like I don't know, at least Chicago's at least like 10 times bigger. So
Mhm.
so people from Buffalo, I find generally like really like Chicago, but maybe don't feel the same way about New York. So, all right, Doug, you're an entrepreneur. Tell me about your career trajectory and where it got you to now.
Yeah. So I actually was never really an entrepreneur when I started. Like, I was not the typical entrepreneur, I guess. So like I was a musician all the way up to 2014. Didn't know the first thing about business. Kind of got into it from there. Just I was in kind of doing like travel, like if you know like the miles and points world at all. I was kind of into that more, and I kind of just stumbled upon selling online in e-commerce and Amazon specifically in 2014 just for miles and points. So I kind of did that, and then from there I started to actually get better at it, start to make some money off of it, start to do what's called arbitrage, where you're like buying stuff from like Walmart and other big box stores, selling it on Amazon for ideally a higher price, and kind of netting the profit. And from there, kind of led me to wholesale, and then private label. So I've been kind of doing e-commerce in general for about 6 years now.
So yeah, I mean, I loosely follow Gary Vaynerchuk, and I hear him talking about the type of hustle I would say that you're describing, right? Arbitrage, buy things off Facebook Marketplace, resell them on eBay or somewhere else, Amazon, whatever. Just like the I would say, wow, it's just starting to rain and thunder. But yeah, right. So that type of hustle, and I've heard, and he's not the only one. I've heard more people talk about the benefits of making money that way. How did you get into that?
Um, Honestly, it was just by chance. I didn't know the first thing about it. I had a friend who had talked about, oh yeah, you got to start selling on Amazon. You got like he was gonna do it, but then he was kind of scared. It's like, all right, well, what happens if they close my account because I do something bad or something along those lines? So I had heard about it, and obviously everyone's heard about Amazon, even in 2014.
Yeah.
Uh, so at that point, it was just I think there was a travel and points blog that uh, like I was always looking for ways to get more cash back or go on my next trip with like
Yeah.
at the time like my girlfriend and her two kids and now my wife and two stepsons. But so it was more just that way. and because of it, honestly, like I've made so many mistakes along the way that like if I would have thought about it then in terms of like how I am now, it's like the whole thing go back in time. Um, but since I didn't know, you don't know what you don't know, so you just kind of you jump into it and you really don't have a like don't have any idea what you're gonna do, and you just kind of figure it out. In essence, what it was.
Yeah. So at the beginning of this, you mentioned arbitrage, wholesale, and private label, right? Most people know what arbitrage is. A lot of people follow Gary Vaynerchuk. He says, go on Facebook Marketplace or go on Craigslist, buy something, pick up free stuff, sell it, right? Whatever. Or
Yeah.
the other way around. That's arbitrage. People are familiar with that. I think that's easy to understand. That can also be applied to Amazon or wherever else. Um, People are familiar with the terms wholesale and private label, but in terms of a strategy that an actual person can use to go out and make money, what does that mean?
Yeah. So obviously, in terms of wholesale, all that means is, at least in the way I talk about it, is you would be authorized by a brand. Let's say you were to reach out to say Nike or something and say, I want to sell your products on Amazon. That would never happen because Nike would never let you. But in this example, say that were to happen, then now you are authorized. You have the invoice. You have protections in place in terms of like orders and all of the other things, where you are now protected, saying, okay, I am authorized to sell Nike products on Amazon, and then you would just place your order, buy in bulk, and get it shipped to you, or let's say like a third-party warehouse, and get it prepped and packed and shipped in, so that you can sell your stuff sell Nike stuff on Amazon as you as a seller. So that's the wholesale side of it. And then private label is completely different in the fact that like you're the one creating the product, you're the one creating the brand. So it can be something as simple as you find something in China, you make a few little tweaks, put your brand's name on it, and bring it to the States and sell it on Amazon. And that's private label. It could be something more complicated, where it's like something that's never been out there before. You came up with this idea, you came up with everything about it. You're gonna like patent it, and it's your product, it's your brand. Nobody else has ever thought of this before. It's yours. That it can be any of those kinds of things for private label. Um, and in terms of all three models as well, they have their own pluses and minuses, like any other kind of business model. Honestly, like that's why like everyone seems to want to start with arbitrage, or I usually recommend it if you were to start selling online. Just in terms
Why?
uh, specifically, it's you don't have to deal with as much capital in terms of like raising it, in terms of dealing with a lot of the aspects of running a business, because a lot of people that get started with arbitrage, they don't really know how to run a business. There are some that do, but in general, it's like it's kind of that way to get started selling online. So it helps you in terms of like build up your, like I talk about mindset all the time. It helps with like get a positive reinforcement. Basically, it's immediate gratification, because you could find something at Walmart, say for like $10, sell it on Amazon for 30 or $40, pocket the difference, and in like a week or two, you have money in your account. So it's like right away you can start to see, oh wow, this works, and I can start to scale from there, keep getting better. With
How
wholesale,
much how much do you is there any benefit to like just really learning a lot by being like, I guess that much in like you're nose deep into actual commerce,
right?
right? At its most basic level, and a lot of people are more further removed from that, right? We work for companies that are part of larger systems that produce and market and sell products, and we're not as close to, like, unless you're in sales, right? You're not as close to like how that works. Even if you are in sales, maybe you're not as you're basically shortening the feedback loop between, like cost of doing business and profit, right? Do you think there's a lot of benefit in just learning how commerce works by doing arbitrage?
Oh, definitely. I mean, like I said, I mean, I didn't know the first thing at all about how to run a business or anything along those lines when I started. It's an amazing way to, obviously, like you were saying, you get that feedback really quickly. So you can make changes. It's the great thing about, in general, about small businesses as well, versus when you get into like big corporate structures. Like it's one of the great benefits is that you can make changes a lot quicker.
Hmm.
You don't have to run it by 10 different people, figure out how that's gonna uh, look compared to everything else that you have planned for the quarter or for the year or anything like that. It's usually like a 1 or 2 man operation where it's like, okay, this didn't work. Let's try this. Let's try this. And it's on you at that point. And you get that feedback a lot quicker. So in essence, you can scale it easier as well. You don't have to run it by a lot of different people. You can, and if you see something that works, you can take advantage of it a lot better than say bigger companies could.
And you can identify the certain products where there is more demand than the actual retail price suggests.
Oh yeah.
It's almost surprising to me that Walmart would, considering how large of a company it is, that it would not know that people will gladly pay $30 or $40 for something that they're selling in their store for 10.
Yeah.
But that has to exist everywhere because
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because everyone always thinks that like Amazon is the cheapest price because, or like Walmart trying to do the same thing. But if it's, I think a lot of that is more in terms of the image that they've cultivated towards their customers. A lot of times, like if you actually look at some of their stuff, they're not. But they're always trying to be. So yeah, they're you don't know, I guess exactly, but um, I guess when you get to be that level as well, you've got your systems in place. So sometimes it is, you think it's cheaper, think it's whatever it is, but if that's, I guess, in a lot of cases, Walmart and Amazon's value proposition is more about lowest price. So you can take advantage of that if you're selling like arbitrage or anything like that to kind of get the gap and start to make money off of it.
cool. So, like, do you have any interest in like encouraging more people to consider this opportunity for themselves?
Yeah, yeah. It definitely. I think there, there obviously, like I was saying, there's pluses, minuses to both arbitrage and wholesale and private label. Um, like I, I think you probably will hear if you were to get, if you were interested at all in terms of like, hey, if I'm coming from a corporate background, I think honestly you would be able to crush this in terms of if you have enough capital available to you to actually start doing it. It's not honestly too complicated, and especially with the way the world's been working in terms of e-commerce becoming more and more the standard, it's a great way in terms of to make a good income, potentially scale better, where you can get to 7 8 figures pretty quickly, um, and you're the head of the operation. So yeah, I definitely think it's still an amazing opportunity. You will see people that will say, oh well, the best time to do it was 10 years ago, or the best time to do it was 5 years ago. There's still a lot of there's so much demand out there in general for e-commerce, and it's only getting bigger. I mean, at this point, Amazon has um, been doing things on their end to try and like bring down sales just because they can't keep up. Like Amazon, the big behemoth that they are, is having issues trying to keep up with the demand because obviously partially because of the virus. But so yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity still. I think if people were interested.
Um, what would you say to somebody who's interested in getting started?
Um, I would say start with arbitrage, even if it's not the model you want to go with. I started with arbitrage. A lot of people I know as well started that way. It's good to understand the platform itself because, like any other business, there are quirks. Uh, and if you do, like Amazon is somewhat forgiving in terms of when you're getting started. However, they I will say they don't care about you. It's all about the customer. Like that's their business model, right? It's always the customer first, you last. So it really helps if you can start with, say, arbitrage in this example. You don't have a lot of capital involved. So if you make mistakes, you're not going to lose a lot of money. It helps you understand what the process is. If you're doing wholesale or you're doing private label, then you're dealing with other people. Like wholesale specifically, you're representing other brands. So if you make mistakes, then that could really screw up a lot of your both capital and your relationships with brands. Private label side, when you're getting started, there's typically a bigger cost to it because you're the brand. You're having to go through this longer process to bring products to market. So there's typically a bigger overhead. So with arbitrage, you could start for as low as say 50 or $100 if you wanted to learn how the platform works. And then even if you completely screw up, you make the wrong choice as you're trying to find something, you're out $100, right? It's not really that big a deal. Versus wholesale, you're routinely placing orders $20,000 to $50,000 as you get further up. Private label, you could have stuff that's as little as say $1,000, but you can start to get up to orders of say 50,000, 100,000 for initial orders. And then if you make mistakes and you don't understand the Amazon platform, then you're out $50,000 or $100,000 versus $100. So there's a lot less risk to it as you're getting started. You can learn how it works.
Do you have employees, or do you do this all yourself?
I've done both. I've had U.S. employees. I've had virtual assistants, like usually in the Philippines for us. Typically, you can do a lot with honestly just virtual assistants, where you can be more of a one-man operation if you want to. Get most of the day-to-day stuff done by virtual assistants in another time zone. You can even have it done where, say, you're working, say you're going to work 8 hours a day. You're working, say, like 9 to 5. If you wanted to do that, and then your virtual assistant is working like starting at 5 p.m. So like it's continuous cycle. So then when you wake up, their work is done. You get to start your day fresh. So you honestly don't need a lot in terms of employees or anything to get started with it. Even I know companies that are doing probably 8 figures and they have maybe 1 or 2 U.S. employees. It's all virtual assistants because it's a lot of times, like I was saying, in terms of the idea that they work when you don't. As long as your processes and systems are set up in a way that they can understand, then they can basically be you without you having to do anything. It's a much easier way to scale your operation. It's much more cost effective. Unless you're dealing specifically with inventory and other aspects where you need a US based employee, like sometimes I would say, like if you're doing sales calls for other stuff, if you're trying to sell on your own website or sell other things, then it might be worth having a US based employee. But otherwise, most of the time you can get away with just having a virtual assistant, paying them a lot less and getting a good job done.
Interesting. Yeah. Um, so I got sidetracked for a second with another thought. I'm familiar with like onlinejobs.ph, and I've heard a lot more people. I mean, that's one particular example of virtual assistants in the Philippines, but I've heard a lot of people advocate for virtual assistants. Personally, like I am open to the idea, but I have not in my head figured out a way where that would work for me. Maybe that will change someday. But I find that very interesting. So, just another example, another case study for those, interested in maybe exploring the virtual assistant route. What would you say is your proudest moment as an entrepreneur? What excites you?
Honestly, it wasn't even my proudest moment. It was a proudest moment that had to do with my wife, because we've done private label for a little while now, and so like we started with Arbitrage, did wholesale, and now we're primarily doing private label. And we brought our first product to market, and we use something called ManyChat, which is like chatbots, where like it's an automated process in terms of talking to your customer.
Sure,
And,
I build chatbots.
okay, yeah, awesome. So we had a customer reach out to us, and it notified us. So my wife is the face of the company. So we ended up responding. I think we were like both at home at the time or something. So we got on our laptop and checked it out, and she ends up responding and answering whatever the question was that the customer had. And then as soon as they saw like it was her, it's like, oh, what you're actually responding is because she's on the product, and like because we like she's the face of the company, so she's always the one that gives the content and all the other stuff around it. This customer was like, oh my god, you're like thinking of her like this celebrity, like, oh, this is amazing, I'm actually talking to you, this is great. And we were looking at each other like, okay, this is so weird, like she's just some regular person, nothing extraordinary about either of us or anything. And this person thinks like she's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
So it was just like one of those things. Like all we did was we came up with a specific kind of a product, and I guess certain people like it. So
What
it
was
was.
the product?
Uh, it's the one thing about Amazon is that they never want to say anything because you're always scared that like people will kind of take your product. I
Oh,
will say,
okay.
yeah, it's a digestible product though, so it's something that people can take over and over again. But yeah, she was really excited about it, and it was an amazing like moment for us specifically, like because there was obviously when you're coming up with any kind of product and brand, there's a lot that goes into it, and like those are the moments that you're like, okay, this is actually cool. This is really worth it. Like where it
And
helps.
was the chatbot on Amazon or was it on your website?
So yeah, we you don't do anything on Amazon. What it was, and this is why I like a lot of what we've been doing since then on a private label site is trying to own your customer more. So we actually would do like that specifically was either associated with Facebook or a website. I'm not sure which one it was in terms of them reaching out to us. But we use both Facebook and our website to get people on our onto our list, so that we can kind of reach out to them whenever we want. So I'm not quite sure in this example which it was, but I know that she reached out to us. So.
And so do you ever foresee you returning to a normal like office job or workforce?
Oh, never. Yeah. There's obviously there's a lot more stresses in terms of being the business owner. Like everything starts and ends with you, and ultimately like it's on you. So there's more pressure, obviously, but I mean, I love being able to like wake up when I want. Obviously, I have certain things that I always want to get done. Certain things I'm looking towards in terms of where I want to go, but I don't have to really answer to anybody. I as long as I'm doing everything that I need to. I mean, yeah, I can't really see myself doing any kind of like 9 to 5 kind of a job or anything along those lines. It's a lot of fun, honestly. Like even like with the world as it's been now, I love getting up every day. I love like just kind of working, like obviously talking to people like yourself and helping out as many people as I can, and then doing my business. Like I can't imagine myself doing anything else.
That's cool. Yeah, it does certainly afford you some freedoms, but those freedoms always come with a trade-off. It does begin and end with you, and certainly starting up is difficult, and that's something that I'm going through right now. My agency is only about 8 months old, so definitely something I can relate to. Well, listen, Doug, I really appreciate you reaching out and coming on and chatting. I'm really excited to share this with a lot of people and see what they think. I think the idea of making your own living through arbitrage and Amazon based wholesale and white labeling is very interesting. The fact that you can make a career out of it, it can afford you certain freedoms and I don't know. I think this idea of lifestyle design is a lot more is increasing in popularity, and people are being, especially now too. With where we're at, I think people are looking more and more into how they can create additional streams of revenue, and maybe that turn into their full time career. I think it's really interesting. I love the fact that you came on and talked about it. I think sometimes for a lot of us in the traditional working world, it's not something that's on our radar. So it's refreshing to hear it. And I wonder what lessons that, people in the traditional workplace might have. Like sometimes I wonder what would happen if businesses started this,
Hmm.
like, this mindset. I don't know if it exactly maps out, but it's something to think about. Anyways, I'm super thankful to have chatted with you, and maybe we can do this again sometime.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a lot of fun being able to talk to you. Yeah, and then I'd happy to be on anytime that you would like.
Awesome.
Okay.
Doug Levin, thanks so much. Take care.
All right. Have a great day.